Okay, so I thought it would be fun. Not only the big news of last week, not only did WLC cause a big firestorm, but so did our friend Sam Harris. Um, he he had a moment too, like WLC, where he effectively stepped in it. Now, I watched the analysis of it on Capturing Christianity, and I didn't realize the full context. The one that's floating around on Twitter doesn't have a context. It just shows Sam Harris saying this kind of like, most people that are listening to my channel would accept kind of a dopey statement about the ascension. But the context I thought makes it a little bit more interesting and worth talking about, because there's a pretext to it that Cameron played when he showed his clip. If you want to have a good time, put in hashtag Sam Harris on Twitter, okay, and then go look at a whole bunch of Christians are lined up with really pretty fun, pretty clever dunks on Sam Harris's comment. But there's a full context to it that I thought made it more interesting, and that's why I wanted to play the tape. I'll go through some of the guy he had on, Cruz, I think his name is. I thought he was pretty good. It's pretty interesting. And I'll play about. My wife is coming home any minute now, so I better hurry. So I'll do about 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, and see how far I get. But I thought it was funny and of note and worth commenting on. So let's fire her up.
You'll get the chuckles over various phone calls and whatnot when I'm calling the doctor's office or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and we'll play this video. We'll listen to Harris, his comments, and then we'll get your analysis. Here we go.
The thing about Harris that's noteworthy lately, and this has been a trend with him for about the last 10 years. Now, Harris, everyone knows, is one of the Four Horsemen. He's one of the new atheists, the leaders of the new atheist movement. But historically, you go back 20 years, this comment was more like the Sam Harris of old, because for a while now, maybe 10 years, I'm not sure exactly how long, he's been trending in a direction that is very different than the Four Horsemen. His wife is a panpsychist these days. He did a book on meditation. Yeah, meditation. Can you believe that? That's woo, Craig. I understand that. It's woo. He's a woo artist. He's been trending towards a new agnostic, which is a differentiation who this guy, there's this guy, Robert Wright, who did the book on, he has a really good YouTube channel, but he did the book Buddhism, why Buddhism is real, something like that. And he differentiates between what he calls the new agnostics and the new atheists. And he's very critical of the new atheists. And the new atheists are like, the new agnostics are more people that I always talk about, like John Vervaeke, potentially Sam Harris these days. That's why I'm showing you the video. Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Kastrup. These are people who are technically atheist or agnostic, but they're a lot more comfortable talking about spirituality. They don't talk about religion in these totally dismissive, totally disparaging terms. So I thought it was interesting. If you listen to the clip in its full context, Sam Harris is still the new Sam Harris. So check it out. Watch. I'll press play and we'll see. Sweetheart, you got to be quiet. We're on camera. Yeah, I know, baby. Come on. You're making me look bad.
And you'd be surprised at the percentage of sober, non-Bible thumping people would say yes to that question.
Okay, so did you catch that already? That's the new Sam Harris. He already admits that there is a category of Christian who is sober-minded and not a Bible thumper. That's already different from the Sam Harris of old. According to the Four Horsemen, we're all just irrational crackpots. We're all, basically totally irrational, lunatic fringe type people.
I mean, I've been amazed at the people who I would have bet a lot of money would be skeptical of that piece. They might be Christian. They might be like, listen, I love the Bible. It gives me a great moral framework. It gives my kids a great moral framework. This is the tradition I'm identified with. This is all super important to me. But that's kind of as far as it goes, right? Like, I'm not going to make magical claims about flying saviors who are literally going to come down from where is heaven exactly, given that we have, multiple telescopes up there, beaming back, tens of billions of years worth of information. I'm amazed at the number of people who will bite the bullet on the core doctrine and say, yeah, I think Jesus is going to come back and raise the dead.
Okay, before I let Cruz comment, do you see what I mean? In the full context, the one that's circulating around on Twitter is just the dunking on, pull out the telescope and where is Jesus anyways? Could work in the fundamental. And it's a really dumb comment. But in the full context, he's saying literally there are a lot of Christians out there who are really rational actors. And they want to raise their kids in something like a religious tradition for moral and ethical reasons. And he's more or less saying, I get that part of it, but these guys still believe this kooky aspect of Christianity. Then he makes the famous comment. Did you catch all that? Because that's really important. That's very different than the Sam Harris of old. The Sam Harris of old would have just given you the dopey take on the ascension and would have said, all these fundy kooks believe this nonsense. He wouldn't have said there's a whole bunch of Christians who are rational actors who are trying to raise their kids properly. And I understand, more or less said, I understand why they adopt the ethical framework of Christianity, but they still believe this kooky part of Christianity. That's what I heard. So I'm interested in your comments. Is that did I hear that correctly? Because that's what I heard. Sam Harris stepped in as much as WLC. He admitted there's a normal strain of sensible Christian. So let's hear Cruz Davis respond.
Okay, so telescopes exist, and we have data from telescopes. So then, no heaven. So what are your thoughts as a Christian?
Yeah, put that. I mean, the comment is dumb. Everybody understands. Just the isolated comment is dumb. Probably Sam Harris understands it as dumb. He's probably tried to walk it back, my guess. Like I said, you want to have a good time, put in hashtag Sam Harris on Twitter and go read all the dunks. You'll see people, a lot of dunks on it. And some of them are really funny. So go check that out.
Is this sort of game over for Christianity, or what's going on here?
Well, to be frank with you, this is perhaps the most entirely naive way that you can understand what's going on here. This is like, I beat the 5-year-old's theology. Let me pat myself on the back for it.
That's totally 100% true. Reminds me of the time literally when I was in like 6th grade, and I thought I discovered the flaw in Christianity and was like, well, Mary's a virgin. She can't be a virgin if but she got pregnant. She can't be a Virgin Mary if she got pregnant. I went and told it to my cousin, nobody ever thought of that before. This is that type of idea where it's like the 5-year-old dunking on Christianity. But I'm pretty sure Sam Harris meant it as a throwaway line kind of goofily. I don't think it's something that he would double down on these days. And actually, I could be wrong. I haven't watched any of his follow-up whether he's trying to support the comment or walk it back or whatever. But I'm pretty sure that the Sam Harris of nowadays doesn't actually think in these sort of new atheist Christianity is so dumb. Look how dumb it is terms.
Not much deep thought going on. There's not much looking into any sort of thing that's going on in the tradition or whatnot. It's
not very charitable.
Well, I mean, that's typical of your Sam Harris type people.
Right. That's totally typical of new atheist type take on. And, there's probably atheists listening to me who have a conniption over the term new atheist. You shouldn't. You lump Christians into categories too. There's conservative Christians, there's liberal Christians, there's progressive Christians. And as far as I know, I don't see any of us crying over being lumped into different categories. It's an explication. It's an explanation of a certain type of atheist. The label doesn't fit everybody, but the new atheist tends to be very dismissive. And Sam Harris was one of them. 4 horsemen, born and bred. He is no longer one of them. That's my point. That's what made this jarring. And I don't think he's necessarily trending back towards becoming one of them. Why? Because there's no future in that type of what Cruz is about to go on. I've already watched this part once over. So Cruz is about to go on and give a really good explanation of that brand of atheism, that sort of new atheism. Let's dunk on Christianity. I call them the debate me bros. It's dense. It's really dumb. It's taking a really dumb read on Christianity and projecting it onto all Christianity and disparaging, trying to tear down all of religion in the process. And it's really uncharitable. And but for a long time, Sam Harris has been trending away from that take and heading more towards a new agnostic take, which the new agnostics are pretty much pro-Christianity and pro-religion in general.
So actually, before we answer this question, I think it's really important to ask, as a Christian, how should you approach somebody like this? And in my view, it's they're kind of the.
We pray for him. We pray for you, Sam Harris. God love you, brother. We love you, brother. We just hope you come to see the light. God, speak to his heart. Open the eye. Actually, it's kind of true. I'm saying it facetiously, but pretty much true. It's the right way to handle it. So I apologize for being facetious. I'll be quiet now.
They're the equivalent of science deniers in a particular way. They're not interested in actually engaging with the kind of nuanced reasoning that has gone into a very rich intellectual tradition. They're not actually interested in engaging academically or deeply with the subject matter. They're here to try to make things sound like a farce.
That's a great explanation. The last line in particular, to try and make things sound like a farce. Now, 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago at this point, I think it was right when Hillary and Trump were running for president. That's when I first started doing apologetics. That's all pretty much anybody was doing in the atheist community. They were trying to, the whole name of the game back then was, let's ridicule Christianity and look at how outlandish and stupid these things they believe are. And it's not the name of the game anymore because it doesn't really work. And Sam Harris, in this particular video, prior to him trying to go back, good Lord, prior to him trying to go back to the old way of doing things, which is ridiculing, basically they were ridiculing fundamentalist Christianity, but you were supposed to infer that I'm ridiculing these outlandish beliefs entailed in fundamentalist Christianity, and you are to infer by definition that I am, the general takedown of all Christianity, all Christians everywhere. You can't do it anymore. Why? Because there are too many Christians who are just as smart, if not smarter, than the atheists. If you listen to my godless Liz, there are a lot of atheists who are still on this page. Christianity is so dumb, it's so irrational, it's so dense, but it's not going to continuously work. Why? Because a lot of the Christians who are coming into the space, quite frankly, are as smart, if not smarter, than the atheists. Even with Matt Dillahunty, he's starting to struggle when he tries to fall back on this paradigm. I pointed this out a few times. I may actually do analysis of some of his debates because I think it would be fun and instructive. But there are a couple of times where he has struggled to put points on the board against Christians in debates and looked somewhat, behind the 8 ball in the process. There are too many Christians coming into the space. Just even someone local like Dry Apologist, who's, has is like me, has a small YouTube channel. He's almost as smart as anybody in the atheist community. He streamed with Alex Malpass. He did a debate with Alex Malpass and he didn't embarrass himself. Alex Malpass is like the philosopher king of the atheist community. And he's just one guy. John Buck, I streamed with John Buck and Dry Apologist yesterday. That's why I mentioned it. Both of them are almost as smart as any atheist I can think of. The name of the game was, I'm so smart by virtue of being an atheist. Christianity is outlandish and ridiculous, and these guys believe the dumbest things. And then they start interpreting Christianity in the dumbest way possible. A talking snake, ooh. You believe in a talking donkey, ooh. Like they become Bible literalists themselves, and then try and project this imbecile take on Christianity onto all of us as a collective. And that is starting not to work anymore. And Sam Harris has been trending away from it for a long time. A long, long, long time. Matter of fact, he's said things that are pro-religion over the past 10 years. I'll try and dig up those streams. There are videos out there. I'll try and, show them to you. I promise. His book on spirituality is a pro-spiritual book. It's not quite ontology. He's not saying that there is necessarily any ontology behind the spiritual practice that he's practicing. It's more of a neuroscience thing, controlling his brain chemistry, but it's still in the ballpark of, I get it. There's positive aspects of this. These people are rational actors. And if you listen to the beginning part of the clip, that's why I was moved to do this video, because if you listen to the beginning part of the clip, he basically says, there are all these Christians who are intelligent and who are really rational actors, and they've decided upon Christianity for reasons that I find at least defensible or rational or justifiable, or in fact, maybe even wise. And yet they believe this weird part of Christianity. So the commentary was like, here's the weird part of Christianity. It wasn't a condemnation of Christianity entirely. Now, let's go on with Cruz. I'm talking over Cruz a lot, but, it's my video. So
without having to work very hard. So when you think about engaging these kinds of objections, I think the thing that you ought to do is think about what your goal is. Are you trying to come to a deeper understanding yourself, or are you trying to say to the other person, hey, I got you? And look, as Christians, our God is truth, capital T, right? So our ultimate goal should always be to uncover the truth. We should be academically respectful. We should try to understand the world in a deep and nuanced way.
I agree with all of that. I think that's basically true and fairly well said.
So the I gotcha kind of attitude is not the right one to go with.
In the past, there's still atheists who are playing teams and only looking for gotcha moments. That's what he means by the I gotcha. Aha, we gotcha. But in the past, that's almost the entirety of the relationship between the atheist community and the Christian community. These guys are dense. There's still a lot of that on Atheist Experience. I understand that. There's a lot of that. I understand that. Okay, that's still a lot of what the Atheist Experience is about. And actually on Atheist Experience, Mark Dillahunty rarely breaks character from Dunk on the Christian. If a Christian calls up, I've noticed this, and matter of fact, if you want, Ron, let me know. Somebody let me know, other than Ron. Stephanie, let me know. I'll let you know, Greg. If you want, I'll put some of those Atheist Experience videos, because when Matt Dillahunty comes upon an intelligent person, they don't necessarily have to be a Christian, but when he comes upon someone he's smart enough to know that this person knows what time it is, or this person's got something upstairs, he usually feigns indignation really quickly, and tries to hurry them off the phone, hurry them into a position where he can hang up on them. Why? Because he doesn't really want to engage in a way where points are scored for the theist. If you're an honest actor, you have to do that. That's the point. Sam Harris doesn't, very rarely, I'll look for the follow-up. Someone let me know, by the way, if Sam Harris is doubling down on this dopey take, or if he's walking back from the dopey take. I'd be surprised if he's doubling down on it, because these type of dopey takes don't work anymore. It's not just that they can be dismissed pretty easily because they're dense. It's that there's too many people who, on the atheist side and the Christian side, who are trying to engage honestly. And we're not just about dunking on each other, right? Am I right here? I mean, I see it a lot. So
it's going to lead us to missing potential errors in our own views, but also it's going to take us down various rabbit trails where we're chasing after something that we're not going to get for somebody who's inherently not interested in engaging academically or intellectually.
Or even honestly, where you're chasing down a rabbit trail of a stupid conversation that isn't even really worth having, right? As opposed to engage. There are plenty of honest actors in the atheist community, and there's literally no point. And I could be being too charitable to Sam Harris, but I think over the years he's morphing into an honest actor. I really do. I could be wrong about that because his Trump statement was pretty stupid too. But he's starting to develop a track record that's a lot more nuanced than your typical, Christianity is dumb, it's a mind virus. He's starting to develop a track record that's walking away from a lot of that. And this was more of a, blast from the past, so to speak. I guess you would call it. I'm not sure. All right, let's keep going.
Actually, with a subject like this. So that said, I said that I think this is the most naive interpretation that you could possibly offer. I've jokingly called it the rocket ship Jesus interpretation of the ascension. And first of all, I don't think that that's going to fit with the way that the ancient world would have seen it. And second of all, who cares about that? We're not trying to buy into their science. We're trying to figure out, theologically how things would best work out. So
that's a great point, because there's some discussion as how the AIM people would have seen it in the AIM on Twitter. And that conversation could be just as wrongheaded. Who cares? They had a context how in they saw the world. They were wrong about a lot of things. There's debates over whether they were flat earthers. There's how, and they didn't have the scientific knowledge. What we are looking for is the spiritual. Did they give us insight? Obviously, I'm a Christian, so I think the Bible is to be taken seriously as spiritual insight, speaks to us in modern terms, in the modern world, on those terms, and really easily. And if you're an atheist, you shouldn't be playing gotcha with the Bible. That's still a problem in the atheist community. An honest actor atheist should be reading the entire Bible as allegorical, period. Why? Because you don't believe any of it. And that's not something that I wouldn't do. When I was looking at other religious faiths, like the Tao Te Ching, when I read other texts, and I spent a lot of time checking out other books, Bhagavad Gita, all that stuff. There's real wisdom and insight in a lot of those books, but I read them all allegorically. I didn't read them to gotcha them. I didn't see a part in the Bhagavad Gita where Shiva was like massacring people. Go, God, Shiva's so immoral. How do they worship this immoral? I assumed that it was metaphorical or allegorical. That's the only honest way to read a text if you don't share the faith. That's the only honest way to read a text if you don't share the faith. Most atheists, not most, but a big chunk of atheists still presuppose literalism as if they're still biblical literalists. And then they justify it. They double down on the scam by saying, I'm just, doing internal critique of your worldview. Okay, that's not an honest take. First of all, that's not necessarily my worldview. I'm not necessarily a literalist. But that's not an honest read. You should be reading the Bible as an atheist allegorically and reading it for truth to you. Is it true to you? Is there anything about this that you think is wise or smart or rings true or sensible? Now, Sam Harris did say that at the beginning of this. He's already looking at Christianity in a different way than he was as the Four Horsemen. It was clear in the context. I don't know. Someone tell me if I'm being too charitable. It sounds to me, yes, he went back into Four Horsemen land. Here's the stupid thing that these idiots believe. I can't believe they believe something so dumb. Do I need a telescope to see Jesus? But in the context of, they're really sensible Christians. And I understand why they want to put the value system of Christianity, raise their kids in that. By the way, I've mentioned this in videos in the past, but there are people who, independent of apologetics, my sister, for example, independent of Christianity, when she first had her kid, wanted to raise him in a religious tradition. Why? Because she thought it'd be better for her kid. She wanted him to have that in his life. Now, at the time, she was an agnostic. Now she's a Christian. But back then she wasn't, neither was I. So there are people who see the value in religion independent of, apologists trying to make sure they see that. Cat just knocked over the wine. Cat just knocked over the wine bottle. Okay, sweetheart. Back to...
We know that it says in the text that he was taken up and then disappeared into a cloud. Does that mean that he just keeps on rocketing off in the sky? No, I don't think so. And I think that there's a lot of good reasons to think this. In particular, there's a type of objection that is theologically rich that I like to give to these types of views, which is that I call it the objection from technological Pelagianism. Now, a central commitment that Christians have about heaven and the nature of heaven is it's not the kind of thing that we can gain entry to or access to by our own means whatsoever. And that includes, taking a spaceship or looking through the Hubble telescope or something like that. So there's something already deeply off, theologically speaking, about the kind of interpretation that Harris is offering, where it's...
Well, he's also trying to literalize it on purpose, which is dense. Okay. Nobody thought it was, maybe they thought in the time literally, but that doesn't mean that you reading it today have to literalize it in order to dunk on it, because he's doing that on purpose in order to ridicule it. And that doesn't really, that's a dumb take on it. That doesn't mean the book itself is dumb. That's what I was trying to say, where the honest read, if you are an atheist, if you don't share the faith, you read it allegorical. That's what I did with the Bhagavad Gita. If I read it literally, I'm sure there's ample things to be like, oh, this is so ridiculous. Look, it says Shiva head explodes into 50,000 things. I assume that it's an allegory of something. I assume there's some symbolic content. I assume there's a reason it's being written that is trying to convey something to the reader through spiritual means. I don't presuppose that it's, dumb people who just don't get science. These are dumb people who just can't build a train, who just speaking nonsense. At the dumbest possible take, that's what Aaron Ra will literally say about some of these books. Swear to God, I've heard him say it. I should do that thing. There was a debate with Aaron Ra, and I think I forget who it was. It was a Christian. It was on the old Non Sequitur show, and I couldn't even believe his take on the Bible was so ridiculous. And he was acting like it was the sensible take when it was the dumbest take I'd ever heard in my life. So,
somebody magically flying back down from heaven or whatever. So that's a good starting place. Now, there's a bunch of different, more nuanced ways of approaching the issue of the ascension on offer. And sorry, let me back up one more step, just to make clear that I think he's missing something important. Think about I think, is it Alicia? He's there with I need to look at the passage, but he's there with somebody on a hill, and there's a whole...
It's Elijah and Moses, am I right? In the ascension? Somebody appears with him. I'm pretty sure it's Elijah and Moses. I thought he said Alicia. Pretty sure he meant Alicia, or there's Elijah and Moses, I think, appear with him. And I'm not exactly sure if you pronounce it Elisha, Alicia, or Elisha, but that was if I remember correctly, that was Elijah's right-hand man who was becoming the Elijah. There's a whole spiritual stuff about the spirit of Elijah. There's a whole cool thing that can be explored with just, at the end time, someone's supposed to come in the spirit and the power of Elijah. And that's a really cool avenue of exploration that I haven't even started trying to look into. So Alicia, it sounded like he said Alicia, Alicia, which is my sister's name, but it could be Alicia. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it.
Army coming in, and they're like, we're not going to win, we're outnumbered. And he's like, look around you. And God lifts the veil from the eyes of the other person, and they see this whole army of angels around. And there's a sense in which
okay, did you guys catch that? Because that's really cool. So there is a sense in which metaphor and reality combine. That's called a spiritual insight. Okay. You, the atheist, you're not supposed to be reading this literally. You're supposed to be reading it metaphorically. But if you want to see a really cool example of what he just talked about in a movie, there's a movie, Kingdom of Heaven. It was Ridley Scott. And it's kind of a Christian themed movie, but that exact thing happens. He says, open your eyes to, they're about to face off against the Muslims. He says, open your eyes. And the guy opens his eyes and sees manifold thousands of warriors that weren't there. And that's the metaphor is supposed to be, in that sense, it's real in that sense. It's really cool. I'll try and find the exact clip of it, and maybe I'll do a little short on it. It's really cool scene. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I haven't thought about it in a long time, but I'm pretty sure it's that exact same thing. He probably used that as a reference. It's really cool. It goes, open your eyes. The hills are filled with warriors. And he opens his eyes and sees in the spirit, wow, we're outnumbered and outgunned. We better not mess with the Christians because they got thousands upon thousands of, invisible warriors.
Attitude is that this heavenly world is happening metaphorically right next to ours. It's not
right. Did you catch that? Because I didn't say it all that well, but that's the analogy. This heavenly world is happening right next to us. It's real, and this is where atheists start getting weird. Don't. Spiritual means it's real and it isn't real. It's there are better ways of explaining this that I could go into in videos to come, but I think that's enough for that.
Something where you go travel to the top of a mountain like Olympus or something like that. The spiritual world completely permeates the physical world in the traditional way of thinking about it.
Would you say that this is, and I'm going to use an analogy from a TV show that's pretty popular right now, Stranger Things. Would you say it's almost like kind of like the Upside Down? You say it's kind of like the. Have you even watched that show? First of all,
I have, yeah, and
all right, I'm going to say this one last thing, and then I'm going to sign off. I don't want to run streams longer than 50 minutes these days. I can't watch Stranger Things. I'm sure it's a good show, but I when it first came out, okay, people I knew on Facebook and people I knew in general were just too excited about it because if you grew up in the 80s, it's basically like it's such a capturing the spirit of like the Gremlins or one of those Steven Spielberg's movie or like Stand By Me. And everyone was just too excited about it. Everyone's like, oh, you've got to see it. It's fantastic. So I watched like the first 3 episodes and it was okay. I kind of liked it, but people were enjoying it too much for me to enjoy it at all. It was just like, when something's just like hyped to the high heavens and you go and see it and you're like, oh God, you guys, I'm just not feeling it, guys, because they liked it too much. So I'm not crazy about Stranger Things. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's a good show, but I don't really like it because a lot of people I knew who were children of the 80s literally had orgasms over, like literally were orgasming over the show. And I was embarrassed to be watching it, to tell you the truth, because I was like, this just isn't it. You guys are reliving your memory, and the show itself, it's okay. It seems like it's good, but what they are connecting to is like, this is just like watching E.T. the first time. And it's not. It's not at all. I'm not even sure if I was crazy, honestly, about E.T. the first time I saw that in the movie theater. And I was kind of the same way, a little bit underwhelmed by it. I'm sure if I keep talking, I'll annoy people with the blasphemies I'm about to utter forth. But the one movie that I remember the hype and the expectation met reality was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I saw that in the movie theater. And that was just that was a blast. That was an absolute picture perfect popcorn movie to see in the movie theater. I mean, it was so much fun right from the opening scene. So other than that, some of those Steven Spielberg movies, I remember being slightly underwhelmed by them at the time. Stand By Me, I loved. I went to see with my friends. They overhyped that a little. It's still a really good movie though. And I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. But the Stranger Things, it's that same idea. People were overhyping it, like they were talking about it like it's the second coming of, E.T. or it's the new Star Wars. It's a new thing that absolutely case closed is the best thing you've ever seen in your life. And it really, I didn't think it was. It's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it nowhere near close to the hype. So with that controversial little aside, I will wrap her up. That is all for now. I'm going to be doing probably more of this type of broadcast, depending on, it's fun. There's a lot of stuff that I see on YouTube and I want to kind of share my thoughts on it. So I'll be doing more of this type of thing. With that, Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.